BookTube. My name is Sarah and welcome to my channel. Today I'm coming to you with the weekly reads for May the 12th of 2018. Full disclosure, it is actually Friday night, not Saturday. I usually film these videos on Saturday, but I have a very busy weekend coming up. And yeah, I was thinking to myself today, I'm like, I have time when I get home from work, lots of time. I don't have to pick up my husband from work until 11:30 tonight. So I'm going to sit down and do my videos for you guys. So that way I don't feel, not pressure, I never feel pressure to do these, but with having things to do this weekend, you know, more than I normally do, I just figured this would probably be the easiest. So very quickly, I'm just going to share with you. I've actually already recorded this beginning part like 4 times. And the last time I finally was like just about to get into the books and realized that I forgot something. So I stopped it again. But that's okay because you guys are I'm going to cut out the 5 minutes of rambling that I did in the previous version. So what's really exciting is that at work today, somebody in the company, I don't know who it was, donated baseball tickets to the Blue Jays game tomorrow. I guess they had tickets and for whatever reason they couldn't go. And so they donated them to the company. And the company then turned around and decided to raffle them off to us employees, which is super awesome. And the money raised from the raffle was going back into the social committee. So that was really, really nice of that person to donate those tickets. Yours truly won the baseball tickets. And not only, the only reason I went and put money on them, or bought into the raffle, I should say, is because, I mean, I love baseball and I love going to see baseball games. But even though I'm a born and raised Torontonian, I am not a Jays fan. If you can't tell from the hats, 1, 2, sitting up over my head. I am a Red Sox fan. Have been since I don't remember not being a Red Sox fan. That's who they are playing this weekend. So my husband and I have awesome seats, expensive seats. You know, I try to get to a game at least once a year, and tickets to baseball or any really sporting event can be very pricey. The tickets, I think, have a face value of almost $100 a piece. Usually when my hubby and I go, we end up sitting like way in the 500 level, like the nosebleed section, you know, for our $12 or $15 tickets. Because it can be a very expensive day by the time you get downtown and you get something to eat and, you know, things like that. You know, that $12 or $15 ticket suddenly turns into like a $40 or $50 ticket per person. We won these tickets and they're like, you know, not far from like home base. So we are totally excited. Can't wait to go down. What I am going to do for you guys tomorrow is I am going to do my best to get video because we are taking the train down. I will not drive. I love the city, but I do whatever I can to not have to drive in the city. There are a few places I will drive downtown. I will drive to the hospital when I have to go for appointments and things like that because I know how to get there. I know the route. I know where I can park. I know how much it's going to cost me, which is like a gazillion dollars. No joke, guys. Every time I have to go down to the hospital, it's an easy $30 for parking. I swear, that's why I think healthcare is free in Canada, because we pay so much in parking at the hospitals. But anyway, no, I'm kidding. That's not the reason. Anyone who's not in Canada is like, really? But anyway, if it's not that I don't know where Rogers Center or Skydome, as it will always be known to me, is, but parking is at a premium, especially during a game. And I'm just like, I refuse to pay that kind of money. I'd rather pay the 20 bucks. My husband and I are going to take the train downtown so I can get some video for you guys of going into the city. And yeah, I'll get some video at the game. I may make it a vlog over the weekend. We shall see. I don't know. If I don't do a whole vlog, I will at least post that footage at the end of next week's weekly reads. But if I do make it into a vlog, I'll probably post that on Monday. So we shall see whatever I decide to do. But anyway, so that is that. And then on Sunday, of course, is Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, or aunts, or grandmas, or great-grandmas, or nanas, or grannies, or stepmoms, myself. Yeah, so yes, I am a stepmother. I don't think I mentioned that in my 50 questions you've never been asked tag. I know the whole question about children came up, but yes, I am a stepmother. I have 2 step adults, I guess you could say. My stepson is 22 and my stepdaughter's 21, so they're not exactly little kids. My husband was quite young when he had his kids. He was 19 when his son was born, and 20 when his daughter was born. So anyway, yes, not that they get me anything. It is what it is. Anyway, it's more, you know, logistically speaking, I'm a stepmother, if you will. So anyway, happy Mother's Day. It's also on Thursday, or the Tuesday that just passed, my uncle, my dad's brother, turned 70, and my father turns 69 on Wednesday. So they, of course, always celebrate their birthdays together and Mother's Day together. So we're kind of having a barbecue at my grandmother's house and stuff like that. So that'll be a lot of fun. But anyway, I said I wasn't going to ramble, and here I am rambling. Let's get into the books, you guys, because I'm sure you don't care about any of this. So, first book that I finished this week was Secrets and Speed Dating by Leah Aston. This is a contemporary romance novel. It is Harlequin Romance 4319, and it was published in 2012, of course, by Harlequin. It has an average rating of 3.55 stars on Goodreads, and I gave it 4 stars. I really like this book. I got no challenges completed out of this one. Generally, these are the ones that I read. This is one that I read in print book format, and because they sometimes can take me a little bit longer to get through, I don't peg them for challenges. If there's an ongoing challenge that I'm just trying to fit stuff into, I will, try and fit them in if I can, but this one didn't really fit into anything else that I was doing, so that's what it is. This is a really adorable story. It was about Sophie and Dan, and Sophie went through some major medical issues when she was a child. She had cancer, and unfortunately it left her unable to have children. And she just broke up with her long-term boyfriend of over a few years, and she kind of wants to get back to dating because she's going to her best friend's wedding. And, that whole trope of she doesn't want to show up single. We've all seen the movies, My Best Friend's Wedding and stuff like that. I mean, I hate using the word trope, but it is very much a romance novel cliche. But this was done so well. So two of them meet at the very beginning of the book because she's doing a speed dating thing, like, where you go to a restaurant and you get like 2 minutes with each person, and then you have to decide whether you want to see them again later or not. But every single person that she meets, she's blurting out that she cannot have children because I guess she just wants that put out there. So she meets Dan, and Dan runs the bar that they're at, or the restaurant. And, he says to her, well, why don't I just be your date? And she was like, well, we really don't know each other. So one thing leads to another, and they decide to fake date for the 5 weeks leading up to the wedding to make it seem more real. Like, instead of just sitting there facing each other going, okay, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite kind of food? What beer do you like? If they actually legitimately go out on dates together, they can really get to know each other as a couple, and of course the story goes from there. It was absolutely adorable. I really, really loved it. It was a quick and easy read. It takes place in Perth, Australia. I think I'm pretty sure it's Perth. I know it's in Australia. So that was really interesting, and I do love stories set over there because that is a country that is on my bucket list to go to one day. But yeah, so I really, really enjoyed it, and I absolutely recommend it. The next book that I finished, this one was a doozy, guys, was The Invention of Murder, How the Victorians Reveled in Death and Detection and Created Modern Crime, and this was by Judith Flanders. I listened to, this is a nonfiction history book, if you couldn't tell. This was narrated on audio by Janice Mackenzie. She did a fabulous job, I might add. This was published in 2011 by Thomas Dune Books. It has an average rating of 3.43 stars on Goodreads, and I gave it 3.5 stars. The challenge I got for this one, the reason I read it, well, I read it because I really wanted to read it, and my library had a copy on audio, which was fabulous. But this was also for the Mad Hatter's Tea Party challenge that I'm doing, and it was for spin number 11, which is read a book with the letters March Hare, H-A-R-E, in the title, in any order. And you could use the secondary title. So like it's called The Invention of Murder, and then the whole How the Victorians blah blah blah. You could use that to spell out your words too. So this one worked out for this. This unfortunately wasn't what I thought it was going to be, but I still enjoyed it nonetheless. If you are a history buff, especially of Victorian England, I highly recommend this book. Again, it was fabulous on audio, but I got such a kick out of the audio because you knew that it was taken, like, because I listened to it digitally. I listen to all my audio digitally. None of it's on CD or tape. And you could tell it had been, like, dubbed from a CD because you'd be listening to something then it'd be, like, end of disc 2, beginning of disc 3, like, as you're listening to it. But it was actually 15 discs in length. This audiobook was 18 hours long, and I listened to it at double speed, so it still took me, almost 10 hours to listen to. So my disappointment in it was because I thought they were going to get more into like the forensics and stuff like that, but it was literally weird murder cases that happened in Victorian England that kind of started to spur things to change. And, you know, like at the very beginning, they go right back to like the police force being started and Scotland Yard being started. But, you know, like it'd be like a case, and then they talk about like the outcome, and they would talk about, you know, a lot of times, a lot of these things became plays and became like books and stories and pamphlets and these things called broadsides and penny dreadfuls, I believe they were called, which was like, you know, I can just picture like this magazine that these little boys would read about these grisly murders, but that's what it was like. Towards the end of the book, it got into Jack the Ripper, and, you know, how maybe nowadays he wouldn't have gotten away with what he got away with. Maybe they would have caught who he was and stuff like that. The Scotland Yard bit that they talked about I found very interesting. I really enjoyed this book. Now, again, 18-hour long audiobook. I think it was just shy of 600 pages. I actually have a physical copy of this book because I love the cover. It's just so weird and creepy and awesome that I do want a copy of it for my shelves because I do love nonfiction books. And so at like 600 pages, though, I think this would have been a very difficult one to get through reading it, like physically reading it, because it can get dry. And some of it can get a bit repetitive with some of the cases and things like that, which is why I dropped it down to about 3.5 stars. But it was still highly enjoyable. If you like history, if you can grab it from your library, definitely do so if you're into that kind of thing. And yeah, I enjoyed it. The next book that I finished was A Sweetheart for Jude Fortune by Cindy Kirk. This is another contemporary romance novel. It is book number 2 in the Fortunes of Texas Welcome to Horseback Hollow series. It is a Harlequin Special Edition number 2312. It was published in 2014 by Harlequin. It has an average rating of 3.61 stars on Goodreads, and I gave it 4 stars. I got 2 challenges for this one. The first one was for the What to Read in 2018 for task number 6, which was read a book that is off your TBR by a new to you author. This one I kind of cheated a bit because before I joined Goodreads, I read Cindy Kirk, but I haven't read her since joining Goodreads, so it appears to be a new to me author. I'm allowing it. And I also got the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs Quarterly Challenge for Sapphire, which is read a book with a blue cover or a book that makes you smile. This one has some blue in the cover, and it really did make me smile. This was a really cute story. It kind of follows the first book. You do not have to have read the first book, but events at the tail end of the first book come into this book. And in that one, there's a plane crash at the end of the first book, and it's just kind of mentioned in passing. You know, it's not a major character in that first story or anything is involved in it, but they kind of mention it, and then it leads into this book. In this book, this is the story of Gabby and Jude, and Gabby has been living her whole life in Miami with her parents, and her mother passed a number of years ago, and about a year earlier, her father moved to Texas, to Horseback Hollow, where he is now a flight instructor. He was the one who was in the plane crash. So she has now come to Horseback Hollow. She's taken a leave from work to look after him and help him recuperate. So on one of her first days there, she meets Jude coming out of a store, and he's a good-looking cowboy. You know how it goes, right? So I was really enjoying this story, you know, a great little romance, you know, a small-town romance with a cowboy and stuff like that. But then it got mentioned at the beginning that Gabrielle, or Gabby, had a heart transplant. And I will be honest, immediately I got my back up. Because as a congenital cardiac patient myself, not one who's ever had a heart transplant, that could be something in the cards for me eventually down the road. It's nothing I want to dwell on or think about, but it could be. But I always get my back up when I hear about cardiac and the way that cardiac disease and defects and things are treated in books. Because sometimes the authors do their homework and sometimes they do not. And, you know, I thought this can go one of 2 ways. If this isn't done not correctly, there's no correct way to do it. But if this isn't done, in my opinion, as a more realistic portrayal of someone with a condition, then it could get a bad rating for me, and I might get very mad at the book. Unfortunately, as much as I love the Sleepless in Manhattan series, I did not completely agree with the way that the main character in that first book was written with her congenital heart condition. Again, this is something that somebody with this kind of condition would notice. It's not something that your average person who doesn't have to deal with this would. Does that make sense? You know, same as like if you're reading about someone with cancer or, you know, someone who has autism, or, you know, that whole own voices thing, right? So anyway, I'm not saying that this is an own voices book. I'm just saying that's just what I'm trying to compare it to, so you might understand where I'm coming from. So Gabrielle knows that, you know, not that necessarily her time is limited. You don't want to live your life thinking that way. Nobody wants to know their life expectancy, in my opinion. My cardiologist has asked me, are you interested? And I said, no. Are you? To which she replied, no. I'm like, why would you want to know that? Some people, I guess, want to. I have no interest. I want to live my life and enjoy it. I don't want to think about some number ticking in the distance. Do you know what I mean? But with a heart transplant, of course, that really, really changes. And I have a lot of friends. I belong to this great group on Facebook, and it is for women with congenital cardiac disease, adult women. And it's really great for support and things like that. If we have questions, we don't feel silly asking them, because some of us have been through it before. But I have been in talks with a number of women who have had heart transplants. And it's a terrifying, terrifying thing to have done. And to live the rest of your life knowing that, you know, the medications may not always work, or, you know, that heart may only last for so long. You know, you kind of always got that hang over your head. And I do appreciate that the author knew that. And she wrote that into this book, and it was well done. The other thing, and without giving away too much of a spoiler alert, I mean, it is a happily ever after. They always are in these books. But at the very end, you know, she was still hesitant to be with him, because she's like, I can't have children. And he's like, he said, I'm okay with that. I'm okay. You know, nothing saying we can't adopt. Nothing saying we can't have a surrogate. And he said, I would be even happy if it was just me and you for the rest of our lives, no matter how long that happens to be. And it really filled me with a lot of joy, because, you know, I've seen people or authors take the easy way out. And, you know, suddenly this person or this character is at their doctor's office, and the doctor's like, oh yeah, you can absolutely go through a pregnancy. No problem. And then there's no complications. Unfortunately, that's not always reality. It can happen. But most times, sadly, it's not. And I'm glad the author did not do that here. So be all end all, I really enjoyed it. Her father was very, very overprotective of her, making sure she ate properly and she exercised properly. And, you know, she was so careful about eating sweets and things like that. I thought some of it went to a little bit of an extreme with that. But again, I am not a heart transplant patient, so I don't know if those kind of restrictions are put on a person. So in that aspect, maybe I'm not speaking from experience, but I still felt it to be a little over the top, but it is what it is. It really showed the character growth and things like that, and the character's personality and the personality of the father and stuff. So at the end of the day, I loved this book, and I absolutely recommend it. The next one that I finished was Darkest Journey by Heather Graham. This is, of course, a romantic suspense / paranormal novel. It is book number 20 in the Crew of Hunters series. It was narrated on audio by Luke Daniels. It was published in 2016 by Myra, which is, of course, a subsidiary of Harlequin. It has an average rating of 3.93 stars on Goodreads, and I gave it 3.5 stars. I got 2 challenges for this one. The first one was for my May monthly challenge. This month's feature author was Iona Andrews, and she writes a little more to the vampire kind of paranormal books, which I'm not a big fan of. But one of the secondary things that you could do was just read a paranormal novel. And there are ghosts in the story, so it absolutely fit that category. And this was also my 17th book for the Stacking the Series challenge. So, truth be told, this was not my favorite in this trilogy. Now, I say trilogy, but you're like, Sarah, you just said it was book 20. The way this series kind of starts to go is that the books are grouped into threes and into trilogies, where you kind of see the same character or the same setting, or you know what I mean, like within a group of 3 books, and then you move on to a completely different grouping of whatever for the next 3 books. The first 2 books and then this one all centered around this Celtic American cruise line. The first one taking place in the Caribbean, the second book taking place in Alaska, which is the last one I read in April. It's May. I read it in April. And then this one took place in New Orleans, and it was with like a riverboat kind of cruise ship. It takes place with stuff with the Civil War and things like that. I don't know what it was. This one just didn't jive with me as much as the first 2 did. I liked the characters. They had a history. So the whole premise of the story is that this woman named Charlene, who goes by Charlie. She is like a B-level actress, if you will, and she's kind of acting in a friend's indie film about the Civil War, or like Civil War kind of things. And she stumbles literally during filming across a dead body. And then Ethan, who knew her when they were much younger, they grew up together. This is the part that bothered me, is that they kept referring to their history, but other than a one-time thing where they met together, I don't want to give too much away. I mean, but it does happen at the very beginning of the book, is that Charlie is trying to pledge into some like group in high school, and they take her to this cemetery, and they end up leaving her there tied to a tombstone, and Ethan rescues her. And then there's some serial killer who comes, and he tries to get her, and Ethan saves her. And then a couple years later, like he's a couple years older than her, and he's in college, and he shows up one day to his dorm, and she's gotten into his dorm, and she's laying naked in his bed. And, you know, pretty much tries to come on to him. She's probably about 17 to his 19, and he pretty much throws her out. Not because he had no interest, or so it goes, but, you know, he just felt she was too young and, you know, didn't really know what she wanted and what she was doing, that kind of thing. So commendable on his part. But other than that, I didn't see much of a history for the two of them, but yet the two of them seem to have this connection. And I had a hard time with the relationship. I think that was my biggest thing in this book. It was really action-packed. It was really, really interesting. A lot of great Civil War history, especially around the Louisiana, New Orleans area. But I just had a hard time with the relationship. And because the relationship does factor in to be a bigger part of these books, because it is a romantic suspense, you know, you kind of need that. And it wasn't there, sadly. And but I still gave it 3.5 stars. Not, you know, one of the worst books I've read, but not one of my favorites in this series. These are all typically standalone, but, you know, for these, like I said, they're kind of grouped in 3. If you're going to read it, I do recommend you read the first 2. Haunted Destiny and Darkest Journey. Haunted Destiny and Deadly Fate are the 2 that come before this. So I absolutely recommend you read those ones because they were really, really good. And, sorry, just checking my time. The last book that I finished this week was Behind the Film Star's Smile by Kate Hardy. This is another contemporary romance novel. It is another Harlequin romance novel, and it is book number 4419. It was published in 2014 by Harlequin. Has an average rating of 3.54 stars on Goodreads, and I gave this one 3.5 stars. I got one challenge for this one. I read it specifically for the Pass the Parcel challenge for week 9. We were given about 5 different lists, and you had to read a book that featured an actor or an actress, but you had to use them. You had to use a book from these 5 lists, one of these 5 lists from Listopia. So I used one called Actors and Actresses in Category Romance, because I figured these would be shorter books, quicker books, and yeah. I am so glad I picked this book. I really, really liked it. It was an absolutely adorable story. It was about a guy and a girl, of course, and their names are Jess and Luke. Luke is a very, very famous British film star. This takes place in London, England, and as I was reading it, I couldn't help thinking of like Hugh Grant back in like the was it Notting Hill? Was that movie he did with Julia Roberts many, many moons ago? But yeah, like those days, like that kind of a person, right? That great kind of funny and charming personality. And Jess is a temp on the set, and she is there to like kind of like a gopher. Go for this, go for that, you know, helping the script people, helping some of the actors. Well, he shows up on the first day with this dog, this, I think it's a Labrador, it says. And pretty much what happened is that his aunt has rescued this dog from this shelter, this kill shelter. And the dog was about to be put down. And he was just a young pup. Not a puppy, but not an adult dog. And, you know, she's gone off on a trip, and she's just asked him to look after the dog for a week. And he gets Jess to help him. Well, she's got a history with dogs and things like that. She was a police officer. She was a canine police officer. She actually trained the canine dogs. And one night, her husband was also a canine dog. He was a police officer with the canine dog. And they had a little dog between the two of them who was a police dog named Comet. And the husband named Matt and the dog got called out to arrest some drug dealers. And both Matt and the dog were killed, shot and killed. And this was a year prior to the book starting, like to the beginning of the book. So Jess didn't want to go back to do that anymore. She didn't want to work with dogs anymore. She didn't want to fall for another animal or another person because she was so devastated by what happened. And so it's pretty much ends up being the relationship of her and Luke kind of trying to figure things out. Now, what I really appreciated about this is because her husband only died a year earlier. Now, I'm not one to say anything about a grieving process. Everyone grieves differently. You know, some people might not need as much time. Some people might need more time. But I'm glad they gave it like that year. And the relationship itself took place over probably about the course of a month. So it wasn't a quick relationship. It was a nice slow burn. You know, Luke's aunt ends up getting hurt and he has to keep the dog for longer. And of course, Jess starts training the dog. My only complaint, if I had one for this book, is that the dog features so heavily in the story. Like, I read the author's note at the beginning and she said it was very difficult to not have the dog take over the story. And I can absolutely see how that would have been a problem because the dog is the star of this book as far as I'm concerned. Baloo is his name. Her name. Baloo. Baloo, I think. And there's no dog on the cover. Perfect opportunity to put the dog on the cover. That would have been adorable. So, you know, sorry. That's a little fail on my behalf. I wish that Harlequin would have done that because that would have been taking it up the adorable notch even further. But yeah, this was a super quick read and highly enjoyable, and I absolutely recommend it. So what am I currently reading? My current audiobook is Finding Our Forever by Brenda Novak. This is book number 1 in the Silver Springs series, and this is being narrated on audio by Veronica Worthington. I'm enjoying this one so far. It's actually a Harlequin special edition on audio. This one is available as part of the Audible Romance package if you're curious. So this is a story about a woman named Cora, and she was adopted when she was a baby, and she has been on the search for many years for her birth mother. Well, a private detective that she hired has tracked her down, and her mother runs a school for disadvantaged or behavioral issue boys, like a high school, about, what do they say, about an hour outside of Santa Monica or Santa Barbara. So it's in California. So, of course, she happens to be a teacher, so she ends up getting a position at the school just so she can get closer to this woman and find out more about her. Yeah, the story's kind of going from there. She, the woman who's her birth mother has adopted sons. She never had any more biological children, but she has adopted sons. And of course, Cora falls for one of the adopted sons. So that's where the romance part of the story takes place, but there's also this whole adoption aspect. So it should be good. So far, I'm enjoying it. It's only a 6-hour long audiobook, and me listening to it at 2 times speed. I'm about a third of the way through it at this point, I would say. I just started it this morning. I didn't have a lot of listening time today at work. I had some things going on, and I got busy at the end of the day, so I didn't have time to stick in my earbuds and listen. But anyway, besides the point, I will probably get it done tomorrow. And yeah, I'm enjoying it. My current ebook, which I actually haven't started yet because I just finished the last one, the book by Kate Hardy, Behind the Film Star Smile. So my current ebook is Because of the Baby by Cat Shields. This is book number 4 in the Texas Cattlemen's Club After the Storm series. This is about the woman in the series who has been in a coma since the tornado that ripped through town. And she was pregnant at the time, and they delivered her baby. And of course, because she's been in a coma, she hasn't been able to say who the dad is to get in touch with him. So this is where that story is going to pick up. So, scandalous, very soap opera-ish, very great romance novel. I am really looking forward to starting that one. And my current print book that I am reading is The Adventurer's Bride by June Francis. This is, it's a Harlequin historical, but this is actually a Harlequin historical subscription. So they put out separate books. I don't think they still do this, but they put out separate books just for people who subscribed to getting the physical books. You can enter into a subscription on Harlequin for any of the category series that they do, either by print book or by ebook. And you will get you can pick anywhere from 3 to 6 books every month and get sent to you. So this is one of the subscription ones. I happened upon it at a used bookstore. I didn't even realize that you don't realize it's a subscription one until you look it up. But this it's a Tudor book, takes place in Tudor, England. And my only complaint about this book, I'm about 40 pages of the way through it, is that this is not part of a series, but it takes place right after the events of another book that the author wrote. So all the same characters are in this one, and it keeps, 40 pages in, guys, all I've heard about what's already happened in the first book. I really wish the author would have just made it a series, and then I would have known to have picked up the first book first. So that's a little disappointing. Anyway, it's about this woman, and her name is Jane, and her husband passed about 4 months ago. And this gentleman's name is Nicholas, and they had known each other before. Like I said, there was that whole previous book where the two of them met. And her husband actually passed on the same day that she gave birth to their son. So that was kind of sad. But anyway, he has now come for the christening of this little boy who's 4 months old now. And because he's, I guess, going to be the godfather. And the story's going to go from there. You know, she is now an unmarried widow. I guess that's the whole definition of, well, no, she'd be a widow. She's not unmarried. She's just a widow. And she has 2 daughters plus this new, 2 stepdaughters from her husband's previous relationship. And she's got 2 boys of her own, including the little 4-month-old. And I guess already he's been kind of asking her, well, what are you going to do, you know, for money? Because she had to sell off the family house to pay for things and stuff like that. So the story's going to go from there. It's very, very interesting. The author did her homework on this one. It's really well written. Again, my only complaint is I wish I had known right off the bat that it was part of a series. Or not necessarily part of a series, but like a companion novel. Because I would have very much liked to have read the first book first, and then I would have been a little bit more up to speed. So yeah, so that's what I'm reading. Very quickly before I let you guys go, I'm not going to actually show you what I'm knitting this weekend. I'm going to show you what I finished knitting this week. So first things first, I have the hat. I finished this on Wednesday. Isn't it gorgeous? I absolutely love it. So it's a big floppy kind of beanie. Would that be a beanie style? Toque? Whatever. It's going to keep my head warm. It's actually not going to keep my head warm anymore because it's going to my mother. I posted a picture of this on Facebook and my mom was like, I really like that hat. I'm like, do you want the hat, Mom? Yes, please. She's like, I'll pay you for it. You're not paying. You're my mother. Happy Mother's Day. And then my mom's sister posted. She's like, ooh, I really like that. Would you, you know, and my aunt's birthday's in June. So I know you really don't need a winter hat in June, but I told her I'd make her one for her birthday. So she'll have it come the fall. So that's a bonus. So I do have to knit another one. And then I'd eventually like to knit another one for me because it is a really, really gorgeous hat. So let me take it off. Excuse the hair. So I can show you guys a little bit up close the gorgeous cables that are in this hat. Is that the one I messed up? I did mess up one of the cables. That's the one I messed up. That's the actual cable. There it is. Isn't it pretty? And I love the yarn with that purple in there. And then there's this really neat patterning like on the side. Sorry about the shadow, guys. It's where my camera's sitting. Where my camera and my light are sitting. And shadow. But yeah. So that is one thing that I finished. And I finished that on Wednesday. The other thing, excuse me for reaching. This one I am super stoked about, you guys. I still have to weave in the ends. And then it will officially be done. But I finished the shawl. I almost ran out of yarn. So this purple color here, I was running out of yarn. And I still had another repeat. This is a repeat of the pattern here from this like the lacy holy part. The holy part. To the next part. That's a repeat. I did not have enough to do it because, as you guys can see, it's really, really long. So I did not have enough yarn to do that. And I also didn't have enough yarn to bind off because I wanted to keep a little bit of that purple to put a square in my blanket. I like to use in my blanket as much as I possibly can to be using. This is why I put the sunglasses on the top of my head, guys, is to keep my hair back. To be able to have enough yarn to put a square into my blanket. So what I did was I took the darkest purple, which I still had a lot of, and I did the border in that. So the border is called a picot bind off. And it creates this really neat ridge pattern. It is a giant pain in the patookus to do. It took me 2 days to do it. Because if you knit, what you have to do is you have to cast on 2 stitches and then cast off 4 stitches. Cast on 2 stitches, cast off 4 stitches. And it creates these like ridges. But it really does look spectacular. I love the look of it. And I'm really, really happy. I love the dark against, you know, it kind of ties the whole thing together. You know what I mean? So yeah, so like I said, I still have ends that I need to weave in. But yeah, this is done. So, and no, I'm not casting on anything else new because I have sweaters that I need to finish. But yeah, so there's my new shawl and I absolutely love it. And ignore all the stringy thingies that I have to weave in. And yeah, so that's what I finished this week. So anyway, guys, that is it for this episode, for this video. I do hope you guys enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments below if you've read any of the books that I talked about, what you might have thought about them, or what great book did you read this week, because I would love to know. And until my next video, guys, take care and happy reading. Thanks for watching. Bye.